Welcome to Veterans Speak. Today we confront a hidden crisis, the journey veterans must take to access promised care. For many, the care exists, appointments are scheduled, treatments await, but a silent barrier stands in the way. It's not a lack of doctors or medicine, it's the journey itself. Imagine a veteran in a rural town, 70 miles from the nearest clinic, with a broken-down car and no way to get to a critical appointment. This isn't rare, it's daily reality for thousands. The greatest obstacle isn't illness, but the simple act of getting to care. Solutions like shuttles and volunteer drivers exist, but they're often overstretched and unreliable. Each missed ride chips away at dignity and hope, turning a promise of care into a source of frustration and isolation. For too many, the hardest battle is simply reaching the help they've earned. The transportation challenge for veterans is more than just distance. For those with disabilities or aging bodies, every step, finding an accessible vehicle, a supportive driver, or a working bus, can be a struggle. A missed ride isn't just a logistical failure, it's a message of isolation. Canceling appointments leads to worsening health and deepens the sense of being forgotten. The gap isn't just physical, it's emotional, leaving veterans feeling cut off from the care and community they deserve. This isolation can spiral, making health problems worse and hope harder to find. The true distance is measured not in miles, but in the growing divide between veterans and the support they need. Bridging this gap requires more than vehicles. It demands compassion and commitment. For rural veterans, a doctor's visit can mean a 100-mile round trip and all-day ordeal for a 30-minute appointment. These aren't city streets with buses or ride shares, they're lonely highways, often impassable in bad weather. When a car breaks down, the link to healthcare is severed. Rural life's isolation, often romanticized, becomes a real barrier to care. Asking neighbors for help is hard. Self-reliance and pride make it harder. The result is a two-tiered system. Urban veterans may struggle, but rural veterans face a unique tyranny of distance. Preventative care is postponed, and the promise of healthcare for all who served rings hollow. The long road isn't just a journey, it's a systemic gap leaving too many heroes behind. For aging and disabled veterans, the challenge isn't just finding a ride, it's finding an accessible one. Standard cars can't accommodate wheelchairs or walkers, and public transit is often unreliable or inaccessible. Each potential solution brings new hurdles, turning a simple trip into a daunting quest. Veterans with PTSD or anxiety face different barriers. Crowded buses and unpredictable rides can be overwhelming. True accessibility means physical and psychological safety, a need the system rarely meets. The lack of options sends a demoralizing message: your needs are too complex. When no accessible ride is available, veterans are told their health must wait. This isn't just inconvenience, it's a failure to honor their service. Official programs like the Veterans Transportation Service promise a safety net, but for many, it's full of holes. Overstretched resources and bureaucratic hurdles make rides hard to schedule and even harder to rely on. In rural areas, one van may cover vast distances, turning short trips into all-day ordeals. Last-minute cancellations and administrative errors are common, shattering trust in the system. The process for arranging rides or reimbursement is confusing and often insurmountable for older or disabled veterans. These aren't small cracks, they're gaping holes that leave the most vulnerable behind. The result isn't just missed appointments, it's a sense of abandonment by the very institution meant to care for them. The transportation crisis is more than a logistical failure, it's a moral one. The barriers to transportation carry a heavy toll that is not measured in miles, but in the hidden costs that accumulate with every missed appointment and every difficult journey. The most obvious cost is financial. For veterans living on fixed incomes, the expensive fuel for a long round trip can be a significant strain on a tight budget. If a personal vehicle breaks down, the repair costs can be catastrophic, forcing a choice between fixing the car and paying for other necessities like food or medication. Even when reimbursement is available, it often requires paying out of pocket first and waiting weeks or months for the funds to be returned, a luxury that many simply cannot afford. Beyond the direct financial drain, there is the cost of time. A single appointment can consume an entire day or even two for a rural veteran. This is time that cannot be spent with family, on part-time work, or simply resting. For veterans who rely on family members for rides, this cost is transferred to their loved ones, who must take time off from their own jobs, potentially losing wages and creating a sense of being a burden. This time tax on healthcare discourages preventative visits and early treatment, as the logistical investment feels too high. As a result, manageable health issues can escalate into serious, more costly medical crises down the road, creating a vicious cycle of declining health and increasing costs. Perhaps the most significant hidden cost, however, is the erosion of dignity. The act of serving one's country is rooted in strength, capability, and independence. To then be forced into a position of dependence, to have to repeatedly ask for help, to feel like a burden on family or a faceless bureaucratic system, is profoundly demoralizing. Each canceled ride, each logistical hurdle, chips away at a veteran's sense of self-worth. It can feel like a loss of control over one's own life and health. This feeling of helplessness is a heavy weight to carry, compounding the physical and mental health challenges they already face and leading to a quiet retreat from seeking the care they need. This cumulative toll of financial strain, lost time, and diminished dignity is the true crisis at the heart of the transportation barrier. It is a slow, grinding process that wears people down and isolates them from the support they have earned. The problem is not just about getting to a building. It is about maintaining a connection to the world, preserving one's independence, and upholding the fundamental dignity of every person who has served.
John R., a 72-year-old Army veteran who served in Vietnam, tells a story that is all too common. He lives in a small, remote town in the mountains, a place he chose for its peace and quiet after years of turmoil. But that peace came at a cost he never anticipated. When a nagging pain in his hip was finally diagnosed as needing specialized orthopedic care, his nearest option was a VA medical center nearly 80 miles away. "My old truck, she's been good to me, but that's a long haul," John explains, his voice raspy over the phone. "The first time I made it just fine. The second time the transmission started acting up on the way home. I barely made it back." The fear of being stranded on a lonely highway became a constant companion. For his third appointment, a critical follow-up to discuss surgical options, his truck wouldn't start at all. He called the VA transportation line, hopeful for a solution. He was told the single shuttle serving his county was already fully booked for the next 3 weeks. "They told me to reschedule the appointment," he recalls, a note of frustration entering his voice. "But the clinic said the next opening with the specialist wasn't for another 2 months. The pain was getting worse. I felt trapped, like there were no good options left for me to take." He describes the feeling of helplessness that washed over him. He had faced enemy fire, navigated dense jungles, and led a platoon of men, yet he was being defeated by a broken-down vehicle and a bureaucratic scheduling conflict. "You feel like a failure," John says quietly. "You're supposed to be self-reliant. You don't want to be a burden on anyone. My kids live hours away with their own jobs and families. How can you ask them to take a whole day off work, twice for one appointment? So you just try to handle it, but sometimes you just can't." He ended up canceling the appointment, hoping the pain would somehow subside on its own. Ultimately, John's story highlights the profound sense of abandonment that can result from these systemic failures. "I had to cancel 3 times in total," he concludes. "It's 80 miles. My car doesn't run. I felt like I had no choice but to just give up for a while." His situation isn't about a lack of will or a failure to take his health seriously. It is about a system that offers a solution on paper, but fails to provide a practical path to reach it. For veterans like John, the promise of care feels like a distant shore, visible but utterly unreachable, leaving them to navigate their pain in isolation.
Maria, a Marine Corps veteran who served for 8 years, faces a different kind of barrier. "My challenge isn't just distance, but honestly, accessibility. After a service-related injury left me with limited mobility and a reliance on a wheelchair, navigating the world became a series of obstacles. My fight for healthcare is a fight to be seen and accommodated. I live in a suburban area just 20 miles from a major VA hospital, a distance that should be manageable. Yet for me, it might as well be 100. The local public bus system has wheelchair lifts, but they're, well, notoriously unreliable, and the route would require 3 transfers. I scheduled a ride with the contracted van service 2 weeks in advance. I confirmed the day before. They promised a wheelchair-accessible vehicle would be there at 9 a.m. for my 10:30 appointment. I was ready on the curb at 8:45, but 9 o'clock came and went, then 9:30. I called the dispatch line repeatedly, only to be met with a busy signal or a generic hold message. The van never showed up. No call, no explanation. Just an empty street and that sinking feeling of being forgotten, a feeling I've fought against since my injury. Later that day, I got an automated call from the clinic. It was a notification that I had missed my appointment and that a pattern of no-shows could affect my ability to schedule future care. The automated voice was cold, impersonal, and utterly unaware of my struggle. I said, "I never had a ride." "But who do you say that to? A machine?" I tried calling the clinic back, but I was stuck in a phone tree for 20 minutes before I just gave up. It felt like they were blaming me for their failure. Maria's story is a powerful testament to the fight for dignity within the system. It's not just about the physical logistics of getting to a clinic. It's about being recognized as a person with specific needs. The failure was not just the van that never came. It was the lack of communication, the absence of accountability, and the impersonal, blaming tone of the aftermath. For Maria and thousands of veterans with disabilities, the battle for healthcare is a battle against invisibility. It is a constant effort to make the system see them, acknowledge their needs, and provide the basic, reliable access they were promised and so rightfully deserve.
David, a young Air Force veteran who served 2 tours in Afghanistan, lives with the invisible wounds of war. Diagnosed with severe PTSD, the 40-mile drive to his weekly therapy session at the VA clinic is not just a measure of distance, but a monumental challenge to his mental fortitude. For David, the world outside his home is a landscape of potential triggers. Crowded highways, sudden noises, and the feeling of being exposed in traffic can send his anxiety spiraling. The journey itself becomes a source of the very stress he is seeking treatment for, a cruel irony that he faces every single week. "Some days I can do it," David shares, his words chosen carefully. "I have my route planned. I listen to calming music. I do the breathing exercises my therapist taught me. But other days, I get to the end of my driveway and I just can't. The thought of all those cars, the unpredictability of it all, it's just too much. It feels like a wall I can't climb over." On those days, he is forced to cancel, setting back his progress and deepening his sense of failure and isolation. He knows the therapy helps, but the journey to get there sometimes feels like an insurmountable part of the battle itself. He once tried using a volunteer driver service offered by a local community group, hoping that relinquishing control might ease his anxiety. "The man who came to pick me up was so kind," David remembers, "but he was a talker. He wanted to ask about my service, about what I saw over there. He meant well, I know he did, but every question felt like a landmine. I spent the whole ride just trying to hold it together, trying not to have a panic attack. The experience, though well-intentioned, was so stressful that he never called the service again, choosing to face the drive alone rather than risk that kind of emotional exposure." David's experience reveals a critical gap in understanding. For veterans with PTSD, an accessible ride is not about a ramp. It is about a safe, quiet, and predictable environment. It requires a driver who understands the need for silence, who will not pry, and who can create a space of calm rather than a source of additional stress. The longest 40 miles David calls his weekly trip. His story is a powerful reminder that the barriers to care are not always visible. They exist in the mind, in the quiet struggles that so many veterans face long after they have returned home, making the journey to healing a battle in and of itself. The transportation crisis does not just affect the veteran, it sends shockwaves through their entire family, creating a ripple effect of sacrifice and strain. This is the story of Eleanor, an 85-year-old widow of a Korean War veteran, and her son, Michael. Eleanor needs regular dialysis, a life-sustaining treatment she must attend 3 times a week. Living in a semi-rural area with no public transit and no VA shuttles that could accommodate her schedule, the responsibility fell entirely on Michael. For over a year, he juggled his full-time job at a local factory with his mother's demanding appointment schedule, a precarious balancing act that soon became unsustainable. "I tried everything," Michael says, his voice heavy with the memory of that stressful time. "I used up all my vacation days. I tried to switch shifts with coworkers. My boss was understanding at first, but you can only ask for so much flexibility before it becomes a problem." The factory had strict attendance policies, and Michael's frequent absences, though necessary, put his job in jeopardy. He was caught in an impossible bind to continue working and risk his mother's health, or ensure she got to her treatments and risk losing the income his family depended on. The pressure was immense, affecting his own health and his relationships at home. Ultimately, Michael made a choice that no son should have to make. "I had to quit my job," he states simply, the weight of the decision still evident. "There was no other way. My mom's life depended on that machine. We survive now on her small pension and my wife's part-time work. It's a struggle every single day, We've drained our savings just to keep the lights on and food on the table. The family's financial security was sacrificed at the altar of healthcare access, a direct consequence of a systemic failure to provide a basic, reliable transportation service for a veteran's widow. Their story powerfully illustrates that when we fail to support a veteran, we are also failing their family. The burden of care is transferred from the system to the shoulders of spouses, children, and loved ones. These hidden caregivers make incredible sacrifices of time, money, careers, and their own well-being to fill the gaps. They become the unsung, unpaid, and unsupported transportation network. Michael's sacrifice is a testament to his love for his mother, but it is also a stark indictment of a system that forces families into such desperate and life-altering choices just to secure essential medical care.
Where the pavement of official programs and government systems crumbles and ends, a different kind of road begins.
This road is not paved with asphalt or funded by budgets, but with compassion, commitment, and unwavering faith.
When a veteran is left waiting for a ride that will never arrive, or when the bureaucratic maze becomes too daunting to navigate,
a new and powerful force often steps into the void.
Across the country, in small towns and sprawling cities alike,
It is faith communities, churches, ministries, and groups of dedicated volunteers that are turning the tide.
they hear the quiet calls for help that the larger systems miss.
And they respond not out of obligation, but out of a deeply felt spiritual conviction to serve.
This response is not a formal, centrally organized program.
It is organic, growing from the ground up within local congregations that see a need right in their own backyards.
It starts with a single church member learning about a veteran in their community who cannot get to a doctor's appointment.
That knowledge sparks a simple yet profound question: how can we help?
The answer often begins with one person offering a ride using their own car and their own time.
Soon another volunteer joins, and then another,
They create informal networks powered by text messages and phone calls.
coordinating schedules to ensure that no one is left behind.
This is faith in action, a living embodiment of belief that finds its truest expression in service to others.
These volunteers are driven by a purpose that transcends simple logistics.
They are not just providing a transportation service, they are offering a lifeline of human connection.
They understand that for an isolated veteran, the journey is about more than just getting to a clinic.
It is about knowing that someone cares enough to show up.
To offer a steady hand, a warm smile, and a listening ear.
This compassionate presence can be just as healing as the medical treatment at the end of the ride,
It counters the demoralizing message of abandonment,
with a powerful affirmation of value and belonging.
reminding the veteran that they are not forgotten and their struggles are not invisible.
The intervention of these faith-based groups represents a critical shift from systematic support to communal care.
While government programs are essential, they can often be impersonal and rigid, bound by rules and regulations.
Community and faith groups, however, operate with flexibility and heart.
They can adapt to individual needs.
Whether it is accommodating a last-minute request, providing a quiet ride for a veteran with PTSD,
Or simply sitting in the waiting room with someone who is anxious or alone.
they are filling the cracks in the system not with more bureaucracy but with grace.
Transforming a logistical problem into an opportunity for ministry and genuine human connection. Among the most powerful symbols of this faith-driven response is the humble church van. For many congregations, this vehicle, often used for youth group trips or Sunday school outings, is repurposed into a chariot of compassion. It becomes a dedicated vessel for a mission of care, its seats filled not with singing children, but with our nation's heroes on their way to healing. The acquisition and operation of such a van represents a significant commitment from a church community. It requires fundraising, maintenance, insurance, and a schedule of volunteer drivers who are willing to dedicate their time to this vital ministry, a testament to their collective will to make a tangible difference. These vans are often equipped to meet the specific needs that standard transportation options ignore. Churches will invest in adding wheelchair ramps and lifts, securing tie-downs, and ensuring there is ample space for walkers and other mobility aids. This addresses the critical accessibility gap that leaves so many disabled veterans stranded. The drivers are not just people with a license, they are members of the community, often fellow veterans or individuals with a heart for service who receive training on how to assist passengers with kindness and respect. The church van is more than just a mode of transport. It is a purpose-built tool of ministry, designed to offer a safe, reliable, and dignified journey. The impact of a single church van in a rural county can be transformative. It can become the one reliable option in a sea of uncertainty, the answer to the prayers of dozens of veterans and their families. Suddenly, The 80-mile trip to the VA hospital is no longer an insurmountable obstacle. The veteran, who had to cancel 3 appointments, finally gets to see his specialist. The elderly widow is able to attend her dialysis treatments without her son having to sacrifice his job. The van becomes a mobile beacon of hope, its weekly routes stitching the community together and bridging the vast distances that once created such profound isolation for those in need. This ministry does more than just solve a logistical problem, it builds and strengthens community. The shared journey in the van fosters a sense of camaraderie among the veterans who ride together. They share stories, offer encouragement, and form bonds forged in their shared experience. The volunteer drivers become trusted friends, a consistent and caring presence in the veterans' lives. The church, in turn, becomes more deeply connected to the needs of its community, its faith expressed not just in words on Sunday, but in miles driven on Monday. The church van is truly a vehicle of hope, carrying its passengers toward physical healing while delivering a powerful dose of spiritual and emotional support along the way.
They are demonstrating that true faith is not a passive belief system but an active force for love and healing in the world, showing up in the most practical of ways to honor and care for those who have sacrificed so much.
By offering more than a ride, these faith communities are offering relationship, dignity, and unwavering companionship.
It is about fulfilling the biblical command to carry each other's burdens, not just as a metaphor, but as a literal physical act of service.
It redefines the problem from a logistical challenge to a spiritual calling. Ultimately, this is the true power of faith taking the wheel. It reintegrates the isolated individual back into the fabric of a caring community.
The transportation ministry becomes the first link in a chain of holistic care, addressing not just the physical ailment but also the spiritual and social needs that are so crucial for overall well-being.
They might discover the veteran is lonely and can invite them to a church social event or have a pastor visit them at home.
The church might learn that the veteran is also struggling with food insecurity and can connect them with their food pantry.
The connection made during the ride often leads to further support. Furthermore, this ministry of presence creates a bridge back to a wider community of faith. It is a tangible way of saying, you are not alone in this.
For a veteran who is alone, facing a difficult diagnosis or a stressful procedure, this simple act of solidarity can make all the difference, transforming an intimidating experience into a manageable one.
They will sit with them in the waiting room, providing a calming presence and a friendly face amidst the clinical anxiety of the environment.
They will walk in with them, help them check in at the registration desk, and navigate the often confusing layout of a large medical facility.
The volunteer driver will not just drop the veteran at the front door and leave. This ministry often extends into the clinic or hospital. This begins with the driver, who is not a silent chauffeur but a companion for the journey, offering quiet encouragement or a listening ear, whichever is needed most at that moment.
What they're truly offering is a ministry of presence, a commitment to stand with veterans through their healthcare journey, providing emotional and spiritual support that can be as vital as the ride itself.
The volunteers and ministry leaders who take up this cause understand that the need goes far beyond the curb.
The most profound aspect of this faith-based transportation support is that the service rarely ends when the vehicle is parked.
In his letter to the Galatians, the Apostle Paul issues a directive that is both profoundly simple and, honestly, radically demanding. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. This verse, Galatians chapter 6, verse 2, is not merely a piece of poetic spiritual advice or, just a gentle suggestion for polite behavior. It is a foundational command for the Christian life, a core principle that really defines what it means to live as a community of faith. It calls for a faith that is not passive or internal, but active, tangible, and deeply involved in the real-world struggles of our brothers and sisters. It challenges us to look beyond our own needs and see the heavy loads that others are forced to bear alone. The burdens Paul speaks of are not minor inconveniences. They are the heavy, crushing weights of life that can truly overwhelm a person. In the context of our veterans, these burdens are painfully clear. It is the burden of a debilitating injury, the weight of a traumatic memory, the strain of financial hardship, or the profound loneliness of isolation. The burden is the 70-mile gap between a veteran and their doctor. It is the broken-down truck in the driveway. It is the impassable barrier of a staircase for a veteran in a wheelchair. These are not metaphorical weights. They are real, concrete obstacles that prevent access to healing, hope, and dignity, and they are far too heavy for one person to carry. To carry these burdens is a physical, active verb. It requires us to do more than just offer thoughts and prayers from a distance. It demands that we get our hands dirty. It compels us to step into the difficult spaces of another person's life and offer our own strength to help them move forward. When a church volunteer gives up their Tuesday morning to drive a veteran to an appointment, they are literally carrying that person's burden of immobility. When a congregation raises funds for a wheelchair-accessible van, they are collectively shouldering the financial and logistical weight that was crushing an individual. This is the scripture made manifest. It is faith with its sleeves rolled up, putting love into practical, powerful action. This is how faith is fulfilled. It is easy to say we believe in compassion. It is another thing entirely to live it out. The act of carrying another's burden transforms belief from an abstract concept into a living reality. It is in the quiet hum of the van's engine on a long country road, in the steadying hand offered on an icy sidewalk, and in the patient presence in a sterile waiting room that the law of Christ finds its truest expression. This is not about earning salvation through good works, but about demonstrating the transformative power of a faith that cannot help but respond to suffering with love, action, and unwavering solidarity.
When Paul states that carrying each other's burdens fulfills the law of Christ, he is pointing to the very essence of Jesus' teachings. This law is not a new set of rigid rules and regulations, but a single all-encompassing principle: love. It is the love that Jesus demonstrated throughout his ministry, a love that actively sought out the marginalized, healed the sick, comforted the afflicted, and broke down the barriers that society had erected. The law of Christ is the law of sacrificial love, a love that puts the needs of others before our own. Fulfilling this law requires us to see the world through his eyes, to notice the person on the side of the road and, well, to stop and help. This ministry of mutual support is a radical departure from the world's emphasis on self-sufficiency and individualism. Our culture often celebrates the one who pulls themselves up by their own bootstraps, but faith teaches us that we were never meant to go through life alone. We are designed for community, created to be interdependent. The veteran who is reluctant to ask for a ride because they do not want to be a burden is reflecting a worldly value, not a spiritual one. The law of Christ creates a community where asking for help is not a sign of weakness, but an act of trust, and where giving help is not an obligation, but a privilege and a joy. In this model of community, the roles of giver and receiver are fluid. The volunteer who drives the van one day may be the one who needs a meal brought to their home the next. The veteran who receives a ride to their appointment may in turn offer a listening ear and profound wisdom to the young driver who is struggling with their own life's challenges. This is not a one-way transaction from the strong to the weak. It is a circle of mutual support where everyone has something to give and everyone has a need to be met. It is in this reciprocal exchange of grace that the body of Christ is built up and made strong, with each part supporting the others. Therefore, when a faith community organizes to solve the transportation crisis for its local veterans, it is doing more than a good deed. It is engaging in a profound act of worship. It is creating a space where the law of Christ is the governing principle. They are demonstrating to a world full of isolation and division what it looks like to live in true community, bound together by love and a shared commitment to leaving no one behind. This is how faith moves from the pages of Scripture into the streets of our towns, bringing light, hope, and healing, one journey and one shared burden at a time.
Understanding the problem is the first step. Feeling compassion for those who struggle is essential, but hope truly takes root when that compassion is channeled into concrete, meaningful action. This is the guiding principle behind the work of El Shaddai Christian Ministries. This ministry, led by its earthly director Glenn Ahrens, has seen the immense challenges facing our veterans. They recognize that the battles do not always end when our heroes return home. New struggles, like homelessness, the risk of suicide, and the profound isolation caused by barriers like a lack of transportation, become the new front line. Their mission is to stand in that gap and provide tangible support. El Shaddai Christian Ministries is committed to being a force for positive change, turning faith into direct assistance for veterans and others in crisis. They understand that a ministry's effectiveness is not measured by the size of its building, but by the reach of its helping hands. The work they do is grounded in the practical application of Christian love, addressing the most urgent needs of those who have served. This commitment is not just a statement on a website, It is the driving force behind every program they undertake and every effort they make to bring relief and hope to those who feel forgotten by the very systems designed to support them. To fund this vital outreach, Glenn Ahrens has dedicated his personal talents in a unique and powerful way. He is the author of the book, The Mysteries of the Bible, The Seal of God. This book is designed to offer readers a clearer, more accurate way to interpret and understand Scripture, cutting through common falsehoods and providing a fresh perspective on biblical truths. However, the book's purpose extends far beyond its pages. It is a tool for ministry, a vehicle for funding the critical work that El Shaddai Christian Ministries performs every single day for our nation's veterans and their families. This creates a direct link between spiritual nourishment and practical action. This innovative approach provides a powerful opportunity for people of faith and supporters of our veterans to make a real difference. It recognizes that many people want to help but may not know how. They may not be able to volunteer their time or start a transportation program themselves, but they can contribute in a way that has a direct and immediate impact. By creating this resource, Glenn Ahrens and El Shaddai Christian Ministries have built a bridge. This bridge allows anyone, anywhere, to turn their desire to help into the concrete support that funds life-changing and life-saving programs for the men and women who have sacrificed so much for our country.
Every copy of the Mysteries of the Bible, the Seal of God that is sold, represents more than just a book changing hands. It represents a direct contribution to a cause of immense importance. 100% of the profits from the sale of this book and Glenn Ahrens' subsequent works are donated directly to El Shaddai Christian Ministries. This is not a partial donation or a portion of the proceeds, it is a total commitment. This ensures that every purchase becomes an act of charity, a personal investment in the well-being of veterans who are facing homelessness, struggling with mental health, or isolated by a lack of transportation access. This model transforms a simple transaction into a partnership in ministry. When you purchase the book, you are not just a customer, you become a supporter. Your contribution helps to fuel the programs that combat veteran suicide and provide shelter for those without a home. It helps to keep the lights on and the doors open for a ministry that is on the front lines of this quiet crisis. In a very real sense, the purchase of this book is like putting gas in the tank of that church van, providing the resources needed to complete another journey, to carry another burden, and to bring another veteran to the care they so desperately need. The book itself, available for purchase on Amazon, offers its own value by providing deep biblical insight and clarity, but its greater purpose is found in its impact on the world outside its pages. For the price of a single book, you can contribute to a mission that brings hope where there is despair and provides practical solutions where there are overwhelming problems. It is a simple, accessible way for anyone to join the fight to support our heroes. This is an invitation to participate in the law of Christ, not just by reading about faith, but by actively enabling the work of a ministry that puts that faith into action every single day. Therefore, supporting this hope is an action each of us can take. It is a way to honor the sacrifices of our veterans in a tangible and meaningful way. By purchasing a book, you are casting a vote for compassion. You're sending a message that these men and women are not forgotten and that their struggles matter. It is a purchase with a profound purpose, allowing you to deepen your own spiritual understanding while simultaneously extending a hand of support to those who have served our nation. This is how we can all help carry the burden and ensure that no veteran is left to face their journey alone.
We have journeyed through the lonely back roads and navigated the complex systems that stand between our nation's veterans and the health care they were promised. We have heard the voices of men and women like John, Maria, and David, whose stories are not isolated incidents but echoes of a widespread, silent crisis. Their experiences paint a vivid picture of the immense barriers they face, the tyranny of rural distances, the frustrating lack of accessible vehicles, the unreliability of overstretched systems, and the hidden costs that erode not just their finances, but their very dignity. The unreliability of overstretched systems, and the hidden costs that erode not just their finances, but their very dignity. The problem is clear, the need is urgent, and the consequences of inaction are measured in declining health, deepening isolation, and a profound sense of abandonment felt by those who have served us all. The gap between a veteran and their care is more than a logistical problem. It is a moral one. It represents the final, crucial mile in our nation's commitment to those who wore the uniform. We can build the finest hospitals, staff them with the most brilliant doctors, and develop life-saving treatments. But if the people who need them most cannot get through the door, the promise remains unfulfilled. This final mile is where systemic support often falters, leaving a void that is both vast and deeply personal. It is in this void that we find our call to action, a challenge posed not just to government agencies, but to every citizen, community, and person of faith. The responsibility does not end with others. It begins with us. We have also seen the incredible power of faith taking the wheel, as churches and ministries step up to bridge this gap with compassion and dedication. These communities, driven by the biblical mandate to carry each other's burdens, are transforming church vans into vehicles of hope and volunteer drivers into companions for the journey. They are offering more than just a ride. They are offering a ministry of presence, a tangible expression of love that reminds our veterans they are not forgotten. This compassionate response provides a powerful model for how we can all contribute, proving that even the most daunting challenges can be met when people come together with a shared purpose and a commitment to serve. This brings the challenge directly to our doorstep. The stories of struggle are not meant to simply evoke sympathy. They are meant to inspire a response. The examples of faith in action are not just meant to be admired, they are meant to be emulated. The final mile is a journey we must all be willing to travel. It requires us to move beyond awareness and into active participation. It is a call to our collective conscience, urging us to recognize that honoring our veterans requires more than words of thanks on a holiday. It requires our time, our resources, and our unwavering commitment to ensuring their journey to healing is one they never have to make alone.
The journey to healing is, in many ways, the final part of a veteran's journey home. It is a path toward wholeness, peace, and well-being after years of service and sacrifice. Ensuring that this path is clear of obstacles is not just a matter of policy, it is a sacred duty, a shared responsibility that falls to all of us. Supporting ministries like El Shaddai Christian Ministries, which dedicates its resources to this very cause, is one of the most direct and impactful ways to participate in this mission. Purchasing Glenn Aaron's book, The Mysteries of the Bible, The Seal of God, is an investment in this vital work, turning a personal act of learning into a powerful gesture of support for those in need. We encourage you to take this step. Visit elshaddaichristian.com to learn more about their mission and to find the link to purchase the book. Remember that 100% of the profits directly fund programs aimed at preventing veterans' suicide and homelessness, addressing the very crises that are so often compounded by a lack of access to care. Your purchase becomes a part of the solution, providing the fuel for the van, the resources for outreach, and the support for the infrastructure of compassion that is so desperately needed. It is a simple action with a profound ripple effect, extending a hand of hope to those who feel they have been left behind. Beyond this, we ask you to become an advocate for this cause in your own community. Share this story. Talk to your friends, your family, and your local church about the transportation challenges veterans face. Ask the difficult questions. Are there heroes in our own backyard who are struggling to get to their appointments? What can we, as a community, do to help? Whether it is volunteering your time, organizing a rideshare program, or simply raising awareness, your voice matters. You can be the spark that ignites a compassionate response, ensuring that the final mile to care is paved with community support. Thank you for joining us for this important conversation. If this message has moved you, please help us spread the word by liking this video, sharing it with your networks, and subscribing to our channel for more stories that matter. Every share extends the reach of this message, bringing it to more people who have the heart to help. Together, we can ensure that every veteran has a way to get to the care they need and deserve. We can carry their burdens, bridge the final mile, and make certain that their journey home is one of dignity, respect, and unwavering support.